Psychological horror focuses on mental, emotional, and psychological states to create fear, rather than relying mostly on physical threats like monsters, gore, or jump scares. Psychological horror plays with fear on a personal level. Little Nightmares 2. Tarsier Studios' Little Nightmares is a hauntingly atmospheric experience that masterfully blends childhood fears with psychological horror. As Mono, a young boy donning a paper bag over his head, players traverse a surreal and deeply unsettling world plagued by distorted adults and grotesque environments. The game's eerie silence is broken only by ambient noises and distant echoes, keeping tension high and unease constant. What sets Little Nightmares 2 apart is its ability to invoke dread, not through gore or jump scares, but through its oppressive world design, clever environmental storytelling, and disturbing implications. Each level is a metaphorical exploration of control, media manipulation, and the loss of innocence. The Pale City's inhabitants are not just monsters. They represent societal nightmares, warped by fear and authority. The puzzles and stealth mechanics demand thought and patience, amplifying the sense of vulnerability. Its climax delivers a gut punch that reshapes everything you thought you understood about Mono and his companion Six. This isn't just a horror game. It's a quiet psychological descent into despair and betrayal that lingers long after the credits roll. The Evil Within. Directed by Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami, The Evil Within is a brutal, mind-bending dive into psychological terror playing as Detective Sebastian Castellanos. What starts as a routine investigation quickly spirals into an ever-shifting realm of gore, madness, and relentless fear. The game constantly plays with perception-twisting environments, unreliable narration, and grotesque enemies born from trauma and pain. Combat is brutal and resource-limited, forcing players to think carefully before engaging. But what really stays with you is the way the narrative bleeds into reality, with Sebastian trapped not just in a machine, but within layers of his own trauma and guilt. The game explores loss, grief, and psychological breakdowns with unnerving precision. Its imagery is relentlessly dark. Blood-drenched corridors, malformed beasts, and impossible architecture, all underscored by a creeping, ever-present sense of dread. The Evil Within isn't afraid to get under your skin, and it does so with surgical precision. Mouthwashing is an obscure but unforgettable entry into the psychological horror genre, lurking deep within the indie game underground. It blends surrealist horror with a lo-fi, VHS-style aesthetic that immediately feels wrong, in the best possible way. You play as a nameless individual navigating bizarre domestic environments that loop, twist, and decay in ways that challenge your perception of space and time. The game feels like a waking nightmare, echoing the discomfort of dreams where nothing quite makes sense but everything feels meaningful. With no combat and minimal guidance, you're left alone with your thoughts, unsettling imagery, and cryptic messages that suggest a deeply personal trauma. Its oppressive atmosphere is amplified by glitchy sound design and flickering visuals that simulate memory degradation. What's most disturbing is how mouthwashing makes you feel complicit, like you're digging through someone's mental breakdown and can't look away. By the time you finish, the game doesn't leave you with answers, only feelings, guilt, anxiety, and a lingering sense of dread that festers long after you close the window. It's not well known, but for those who've played it, mouthwashing becomes a permanent scar on the psyche. Doki Doki Literature Club. Don't let the pastel visuals and bubbly anime girls fool you. Doki Doki Literature Club is a psychological horror masterpiece disguised as a dating sim. Initially, it lures you in with typical visual novel tropes: high school crushes, poetry sharing, and charming character interactions. But just when you think you've figured it out, the game pulls the rug out from under you in a deeply disturbing way. Reality breaks. Characters glitch, act unpredictably, and suffer in ways that are emotionally devastating. One moment you're picking poems, the next you're staring into the abyss of mental illness, manipulation, and existential horror. The game uses metafictional tricks, altering files, breaking the fourth wall, and involving the player directly to make you question your role in the narrative. Doki Doki Literature Club is one of the most unique examples of psychological horror in gaming history, precisely because it never looked like one. Silent Hill 2 isn't just a horror game. It's a masterclass in psychological storytelling, widely regarded as one of the greatest horror titles ever made. It places players in the shoes of James Sunderland, a grieving widower drawn to the fog-shrouded town of Silent Hill by a letter from his dead wife. The game doesn't rely on cheap scares. Instead, it builds an oppressive atmosphere of dread through its haunting soundtrack, disturbing imagery, and deeply ambiguous narrative. Silent Hill 2 is unforgettable, a game that crawls into your mind and quietly disturbs you for years. Playdead's Inside is a silent scream of a game. Without dialogue or exposition, it tells a chillingly coherent story that blends platforming with oppressive psychological horror. You play as a nameless boy navigating a bleak, totalitarian world filled with surveillance, conformity, and inexplicable terror. Every moment is meticulously crafted, from the shadowy backdrops to the eerily lifeless inhabitants. Inside excels by saying very little. Its horror lies in implication, experiments on humans, mind control, and the terrifying loss of agency. Its final moments are among the most disturbing in modern gaming. Devotion by Red Candle Games is a haunting psychological horror game set in 1980s Taiwan, and it stands as one of the most emotionally devastating experiences the genre has ever seen. You play as Du Feng Yu, a former screenwriter, as you relive fractured memories of his once happy home life. As you move through different years of the apartment's past, rooms shift, reality blurs, and the truth about the family's slow disintegration emerges. Unlike traditional horror games, Devotion doesn't chase you with monsters. It breaks you down emotionally. Its horror stems from real-world fears. The visuals are rich with Taiwanese cultural references, and the use of sound design, traditional music twisted into something eerie, the echo of unseen footsteps, is masterful. What makes Devotion unforgettable is its restraint. It doesn't rely on gore. Instead, it delivers tragedy through its storytelling. By the end, you're not just frightened, you're heartbroken. SOMA by Frictional Games delivers psychological horror on a cerebral level, exploring the existential nightmare of consciousness, identity, and what it truly means to be human. You awaken in an underwater facility called Pathos 2, after what appears to be a mind upload experiment gone horribly wrong. The game slowly reveals a post-apocalyptic world, where machines exhibit human consciousness, memories, and emotion. But it's never clear who is truly alive or self-aware. Rather than leaning on monsters, though it has them, SOMA's true horror comes from philosophical dread. You're constantly forced to make agonizing decisions. The writing is sharp, and the voice acting brings raw emotion to impossible situations. Layers of Fear is a deeply unsettling descent into artistic madness, where horror stems not from external monsters, but from the collapsing mind of its protagonist. You play as a troubled painter, wandering through a Victorian mansion that constantly morphs around you, an ever-shifting canvas reflecting his psychological disintegration. The game masterfully uses environmental storytelling to blur the lines between memory, hallucination, and guilt. As you explore, doors vanish, hallways twist endlessly, and paintings warp into grotesque reflections of the protagonist's inner turmoil. The game's use of sound is especially haunting, with whispers, creaking floorboards, and the distant cry of a child building constant tension. It's a slow burn experience where every room feels like a confrontation with the past. Amnesia, the dark descent redefined psychological horror in gaming, stripping players of power and forcing them to confront fear on its rawest terms. You awaken as Daniel in a decaying Prussian castle, with no memory of who you are or how you got there. As you uncover disturbing notes and wander deeper into the darkness, you realize something is hunting you. The game's brilliance lies in its sanity system. Hiding in darkness or witnessing horrific events chips away at Daniel's mental state, warping the visuals and intensifying dread. Light becomes both a comfort and a liability, drawing the attention of unseen horrors. The fear is relentless, psychological, and claustrophobic. You're never safe, and the game makes you feel that with every creaking floorboard and sudden gust of wind.